Hello, children. We are going to study chapter 2 in its final aspect. This is on page number 15 to 19. The resources that we are going to speak in this part, in the fourth part of the PPT series, is natural vegetation, that is plants, and wildlife, that is animals. So let's see what our textbook has to say about both of these elements as a natural resource. While we are defining, we saw and we discussed that natural vegetation will be the existing garment of plants, trees, shrubs, or any dry vegetation, tundra vegetation, etc., which is unharmed or which is unmodified by humans for any purposes, right? So the forests could be an example of natural vegetation. Dry shrubs found in certain land that need to be cut before you're constructing something is a naturally grown element, and that is why they are called as natural vegetation. Okay. Similarly, for wildlife, we all know that including aquatic life form of amoeba, which was the first kind of life form on Earth, the wildlife will include all those life forms, the birds, the insects, and other kinds of mammals or amphibians or any other animals which exist around us. So natural vegetation and wildlife will exist only in the narrow zone of contact between three elements which are present in the nature. Those three are atmosphere, which is air, right? Atmosphere is the air cover around us. Lithosphere is the land or the rocks, the earth crust, which is known as lithosphere. Hydrosphere is the element of water present on earth, right? So exactly at one point when these three are present, at that intersection and in that narrow zone, we can find life. Okay, so these two are therefore very, very important and biotic form, living form of resources which are found in biosphere, right? And if we go to study the relation between atmosphere, lithosphere, and hydrosphere, how will that be? What do we think? As human beings, we take many things from nature. We all know this, right? So that taking up or that using up is generally called interdependency, which will be the interdependent relation on the nature. So biosphere is dependent on atmosphere, lithosphere, and hydrosphere. Similarly, hydrosphere will be dependent on lithosphere, and same about atmosphere. That is the interdependence, right? Food pyramid or the food chain, which is shown in this picture here, is the best example of interdependence of the relation. There is also a second term which I want to emphasize here, which is interrelation, right? It is interrelation. And an example for this could be uh, that as we go higher at the mountain, the air starts getting scarce, right? Oxygen levels are dipping. So this is an example of interrelation. कि जितना ऊपर, the height that you go, that will give you lesser amount of air to breathe. So that is kind of the interrelation. Okay, and interdependence example, as we discussed, is the food chain, right? So on this particular slide, I'm just going to walk you through your 7th standard syllabus, maybe a quick refresh for you people. This is the distribution and types of natural vegetation. They are generally discussed or known as evergreen rainforests, deciduous forests, Mediterranean forests, coniferous forest or mountainous forests, and mangroves, which are community lands or wetlands, right, found there. So the importance of forest, as we all know, they give us abundance, in abundance, right? So beyond that, as a resource, how they actually work, we are seeing in the first 3 points. The first one is they hold the soil, they stop the soil erosion and help in conserving it. Okay, they also maintain the balance in environment and act as carbon sink. How did we see that? Yeah, uh, because they are giving out oxygen and taking in carbon dioxide to form their food or during photosynthesis, this will be acting as a carbon sink. It will reduce the amount of carbon dioxide present in the air around them, right? Therefore, they will maintain a certain balance. The trees also act as shelter belt against strong winds and regulate the climate, right? So if there are strong winds and the soil is again getting eroded, this will be in the same point. It's like helping soil conservation. Okay. They are the lungs of the world as they purify the air by supplying oxygen and absorbing carbon dioxide, which we saw in the second point. It will support us by supplying the wood for furniture and fuel, other products like honey, wax, gum, etc. Right? They are natural habitats for a large variety of wildlife too. Right? Now, coming to the importance of wildlife, I'm sure you all have had or seen a pet nearby or around you. And that is why we know that at least when domesticated, wildlife is beautiful. They want us to be equally helpful to them. They are equally helpful to us, right? And this is how that interrelation and interdependence goes on, I guess. So the importance of wildlife, wild in the real sense, if you're talking about those kind of animals, they will provide us with milk, meat, hides, and wool. Insects like bees will provide us with honey and help in the pollination of trees and flowering um, elements, right? That is very, very important. That is how we said that their presence in a particular area is like the liveliness or an indicator of a good environment, right? Some wildlife also play an important role as decomposers. For example, vulture, because of its ability to feed on dead livestock, it acts like a scavenger and is considered as a vital cleanser for the environment. Okay, animals. That is why, and that is how we have been seeing that whether they are big or small, they will all have an important role in maintaining the food chain or the balance in the ecosystem or biosphere. Right. So moving next, we are now going to discuss about um, the causes of depletion that we see today. Why do we say that forest cover is decreasing or vanishing rapidly, and animals and birds are getting a scare, a very, very bad scare for their life. They're changing habitats, they're constantly moving, etc. So as we see all of this, we are now going to check and note a few natural factors and human-made factors responsible for this depletion. Okay, so in natural factors, I'm sure all of you have heard about climate change, which will result or express itself in the form of tsunamis or forest fires or landslides, extreme climate events or weather events which are happening around us. They will be the natural triggers for such kind of decline in plants or animal population. Also, the migratory routes, when they are changing, sometimes it could lead to uh, a different kind of a setup for them, and that could also be a resultant factor for trouble, right? And the list in human-made factors is longer, as you can see, because of our interference through rising population. Number one, because our food demands are increasing, we are trying to deforest and bring that land under harvesting or under agriculture for more and more food production. Okay, so rising population, deforestation, poaching, and pollution. What do you mean by poaching, all of you? It's like hunting, right? Hunting animals is also a cause for their depletion. It has been a persistent problem, I'm sure, before the laws were made to protect the animals. That is why we mentioned it as an important factor. Um, Pollution also, all of you know that they could, this could happen during construction activity, during any other events like setting up industries or burning of agricultural hay, etc. Right? So these are the few factors which are causing today that the vegetation and wildlife is changing. Also, the textbook says that increasing urbanization and rising standards of living is one human-made factor which is also critical, very, very important in changing all this balance and population. So now that we've seen that they are declining, isn't it our duty that we do something towards conserving also, right? Wherever there is a decline, we have to up it through something. And that is the reason we are going to discuss one of the fundamental duty. I would not call it ethical duty, but a fundamental duty of every citizen of India as per the Constitution, which says that we should pay our duty, we should conserve the biodiversity, the lakes, the rivers, and the natural habitat of India. So conservation of the natural vegetation is necessary because we have to preserve and protect the variety of genes and species of plants and animals. Ecological balance is declining, that we have to stop, and biodiversity also has to be maintained. This a small bubble here. I'm sure you will find it interesting once you go through carefully, because these are some conservation zones, if we call them, which are set up in India for the benefit of wildlife and plants. Now we are going to quickly learn about the four methods or the four ways in which we can pay back nature. Okay, a very small amount, I'm sure, but we can still. Okay, if we come together, if each one of us does that day to day, regularly, every day, it will definitely make a difference. And hence, we have to pay our attention towards certain individual level awareness initiatives or programs like Vana Mahotsav, which are conducted by the Social Forestry Department or the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. There are plantation drives. Many of them have it. It's a welcome trend that people are gifting each other trees, or there are companies which promote that the employees join them on a weekend for plantation drives, etc. This is one method. Nature camps. I'm sure all of you would have been a part of it. We discussed it in the class, and I'm sure it has been an eye opener for everyone. And the closer we go, the more we understand that there is a serenity which we can't get elsewhere. So why not try and conserve it, right? So this was the individual level program that we can do, some action that we can take, try and talk to each other about not harming plants and animals, right? Whenever possible. The second one is about community initiative. What can we do as a community when we come together? So there was a particular example, a notable example in Rajasthan about a community called Bishnoi, right? And they came together for maybe religious or cultural belief that these trees or khejri trees are going to protect or they are life givers, etc. And they clinged on to them and stopped the king from cutting them. So this was one initiative as a community. Similar initiative happened in India during the freedom struggle, after the freedom struggle, sorry, in 1974, called the Chipko movement in Garhwal Himalaya, Uttarakhand. Okay, this was where again the women came together. They made a chain around the trees and asked the people to stop cutting their forest. Third is something that the government has to do. Okay, that the national measure has to be taken, and we have to all be good followers of that system. So this system that is set up is that there are forest laws. There is the Indian Forest Act, which was in 1927. There is another Wildlife Protection Act. There is Environment Protection Act. Many such laws have been made to stop the hunting and poaching of wild animals and cutting of trees, right? We also discussed an example of the useful chandan tree, right? Which sandalwood, which should not be cut without permission. So establishing other things like the national parks, animal sanctuaries, and international biosphere reserves is also the duty of every national government. penalizing or punishing the illegal activities in vegetation and wildlife also holds an important duty, because no matter how much we come together, there will be some antisocial elements which will try to harm them, which will try to smuggle or do antisocial activities, and they should be curbed, they should be stopped, they should be punished. And that is how this measure came into being. There have been laws about this also to stop them from doing all this. Also, our Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change celebrates 1 week in September as Forest Martyrs Day. And all those forest guards who are working towards conservation of wildlife and plants are given awards and also some monetary returns as a tribute to their service. Okay, so this can be one of the measure which is promoting the conservation of these two resources. Lastly, on a world scale, on a global scale, we are a part of many conventions or treaties which are signed, and CITES, or Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, is one treaty which our textbook asks us to pay attention or due attention to it, to stop the illegal trading of endangered species of plants and animals both. It is almost covering 28,000 plants and 5,000 animals. It's protecting so many of them, at least in trading, not to trade such endangered species like maybe dolphins or corals or orchids, etc. Okay. Now, this convention was also known as the Washington Treaty, I guess, or Washington this thing, because it was signed there. Okay. So this is one important convention which we are a part of.